Hi everyone, welcome back to my top 500 games, and we are currently at number 350, which is Castle of Illusion, starring Mickey Mouse for the PS3, or rather should I say the new version of the game. I say PS3 because that's the version that I played, but really it's just the new version of this game, the remake, so to speak. So, what makes this game stand out in terms of how it's different from the original version is that this game is much, I'm not going to say much more modernized really, but it does seem to have more modernized things to it, such as, you can save your game and save your progress, and there's lots of collecting stuff and all that. Basically, the aim of the game is to complete all these platforming style levels and collect all of the diamonds as much as you can, and just collect all of the things that you can find, which is basically that type of game that it is. It's a 2.5D game, so it plays in 2D, but there are actually moments where it is 3D, although usually that isn't in the levels themselves, more so it's to do with the hub world, the way that that's set up. That's generally how that goes. And the game is basically sort of like narrated by this, I was going to say it's narrated by this narrator, but then I suppose that's a pointless sentence. But yeah, the game is narrated, and it's narrated in this sort of poetic sense, so it's like, rhyming stuff that you'd expect to hear from the Grinch, that type of stuff. Also, what I find interesting about this game is that enemies tend to be used as commodities rather than just obstacles. So there will be times whereby there'll be things to collect that are high up, and the only time you can reach them is if you jump on the enemy to get some extra height, and the enemies respawn. So there is that element of commodity to the different enemies. I actually started playing this game maybe around 2013 or so. I don't remember exactly when it came out, but I didn't actually play the game too much when I first got it, but when it got to 2015, it was about mid-2015, I started playing the game more. I didn't actually complete the game. Actually, no, that's not true. I did complete the game. I did beat the final boss, but I didn't actually, get all the collectibles and all that. Number 349 is Rodland for the Amiga, although it did come out in a few other systems, including there's a Game Boy version, but I'm specifically talking about the Amiga version here. The basic idea of Rodland is that you control one of two fairy children, and the aim of the game is to climb to the top of this tower to save your mother who's been kidnapped. The way that it works is that each level is like a single screen with ladders and platforms and enemies and stuff, and the way that you interact with the game is that you can create a ladder to sort of ascend, which is sort of like the alternative for jumping in this game since you can't jump. And you basically have to kill all the enemies, and the way that you do that is that you use your magic wand to grab them and you can fling them back and forth, and when you do this you can actually hit other enemies on the way, flinging them around like this. You can also go through doors which will teleport you around the level. There'll also sometimes be balloons that will take you up to the higher parts of the level, so it's kind of got that arcadey style gameplay feel to it, I suppose. Also, if you collect all of the items in the level, that being the main collectible items for that level, whatever it may be, it might be flowers for instance, then you will go to this extra bonus round whereby all the enemies will turn into this weird pink monster thing, and if you kill those they'll drop a letter which switches between the letters E, X, T, R and A, and you pick it up, and if you collect all the letters to spell extra, then you will get an extra life. So that's how you build up your extra lives. There are also different sort of like points that you can collect that will just give you points that will also help you get through, and you can also set off these different contraptions, such as a rocket will, when you walk up to it, it will shoot off in the direction that you're facing, and it will go and hit the enemy. Like a bomb will explode, and you've also got these weird 4 bead things that once you touch them they'll just start flying around. There's also a bouncy ball that can go and attack enemies, and there's a dynamite that will explode into 2 waves, one to the left and one to the right. This game has a few bosses, all of them themed around different animals. Usually they're quite cutesy, but that doesn't stop them from being deadly at all. And the bosses usually include them shooting out miniature versions of themselves. So for example, you got the one with all the crocodiles, they will shoot out little bouncing crocodiles, and you got the whale that will shoot out all these little whales. But I believe that this game was the first game that I ever completed from start to finish. I may be wrong on that, but the final boss is sort of like this weird mythological Taurus creature, maybe? I'm not sure how you describe it, sort of like a bull thing. And the way that it works is that it starts as a small thing and then it will grow as you hit it more and more, and it will unlock more deadly attacks. Number 348 is Big Head Snooker. I really don't have much to say about this. It's a snooker game. There are actually a couple of versions of this game, but the version that I got was the version on the PS Minis, so that was the less graphically advanced one. There really isn't much to say. It's just a snooker game. If you know how to play snooker, then this is just one of those games. It's got a rather user-friendly interface, I suppose. I don't really think of anything else that I can say about this. Number 347 is Zuma Blitz. Now, Zuma is a game that PopCap made whereby you control this frog and you shoot out these different boulders, and you've got to match the boulders to different colours on this path, and you've got to do as much as you can before the boulders fall down the pit at the end of the path. Usually on a Zuma game, the idea is to clear out all the boulders so that you can succeed and complete to the next level. And the difference here is that with Zuma Blitz, you don't have that goal. Rather, you've just got to score as many points as you can. Because it's a Facebook game, it's all about, points. Just getting as much points as you can, just doing as well as you can, scoring high on the weekly scoreboards, that type of thing. Number 346 is Outrun Online Arcade. Now, I believe that you can't get this game anymore. Well, at least not from the systems like the PS3 and the Xbox 360, but something to do with like the license running out. I may be wrong on that, but I believe that's what happened. But I did get this game and I did play it, and it's a racing game, but it's one of those old style racing games whereby rather than just racing against people, you've got a timer and you've got to like get past the checkpoints before the timer runs out. And the game tends to split off onto different paths, so you can always go the left path or the right path when you reach these cross sections. And I think it was set up so that the left path was the easier path and the right path was the harder path. So if you went to the very far left, that was like the easiest path, and the very far right was the hardest path. But the game as a whole was very hard. I think I only actually managed to complete the race one time by going all the way to the left every single time, and even that was hard. Also, if memory serves, the game had a big deal of drafting as well, whereby if you were behind another car, you could actually speed up. I don't understand how the physics of that works, but I just remember that's how the game was at the time. Number 345 is Hyperboloid HD. Now, this is, again, another game that I got on the PS3, and it's one of those bat and ball games. So, you know the typical breakout type game where you've got a ball and it bounces around and you have to break the blocks that are above you, and you have to break all the blocks and all that. Well, Hyperboloid HD was kind of like a more advanced version of that, because you did have to go around, and the general idea was to smash all of the blocks. But what I actually really liked about this game in particular was that you never really had to do that. You only had to break so much, and then the game would kind of release this item whereby if you collect it, you win the level. That was generally the idea. You have to collect the thing that makes you win the level, and once you've broken so many blocks, it will more and more likely drop. So you can have still a few blocks left and then can just win the level because the thing dropped and you collected it. Which I think is good, because I tend to find that the more annoying parts of these games are when you do have 2 blocks left or 1 block left and it's just floating around and you just can't hit it because you just keep missing. This game also did have quite a few different variety of blocks, which was quite interesting. The way that you knocked them and the way that they floated around varied, and you could also get the different power-ups. Of course, there was the one whereby you got the wider bat, but there was also one where you could make the ball stick to your bat so you could move it around. There was also like this weird Gatling gun thing where you could shoot and destroy the blocks through the bullets. And of course there was the multi-ball as well. Number 344 is a game called Moho. Now, this is quite a strange game. I actually originally only had this on a demo, but I did actually get the game eventually, properly, eventually. And the way that this game works is that you control a robot with sort of like a ball for legs. So if you imagine sort of like a 3D wheel, it's kind of like that. And you have this obstacle course, and the aim of the game is to get to the end of this obstacle course and beat the time limit. You do have different obstacles, such as you have quarter pipes, you have fire traps and spike traps, and there's generally parts where you've just got to really take your time to be careful that you don't get knocked into the traps and stuff. And of course the speed up panels. And the game, I remember the game being really hard and really struggling being able to do it, but I did enjoy it, and that's what matters. Number 343 is Bomberman Ultra. This is the PS3, again, I say most of the time when I say PS3 I actually just mean 7th generation, it's just that the PS3 is the version that I play. But yeah, I play this on the PS3. It's basically Bomberman but online, and you can also unlock different costumes and stuff, which really, just unlocking different costumes is just a way of saying that I played so much I unlocked this thing. But I've already explained Bomberman. It's basically, you've got this arena, and you've got so many players, and you run around and drop bombs, blowing bricks up to pick up power-ups, and you basically have to be the last one standing. I think this one may have had the whole feature whereby if you died, you actually got to still continue playing, but you got to ride around on the outskirts of the level to throw bombs to interact with the level. I don't actually remember if that was in this game, but I believe it was. I know that that's the type of thing that Bomberman does. And also, if the battle goes on too long, the walls start closing in to speed it up a bit. Number 342 is the Back to the Future game, which is the... Again, I played it on the PS3, but it's also available on other platforms. And this particular game, what happened was, it was basically another story game, but it kind of worked as a sequel to the Back to the Future trilogy, which I think is what attracted most people. And that's what attracted me, because I know I said before that I really don't have much to say when it comes to these types of adventure, purely story-based games, but I suppose what I can tell you about is my history with Back to the Future in general, because Back to the Future is something that I never grew up with. It took me a long time to actually watch the films. I eventually got the trilogy on DVD. I'm going to guess around 2011, 2012, or maybe around that time. Might have been 2013 even. I'm not sure. Around that time. And I just sat and watched the films. And I liked the films. Not so much the third one, but I liked the first two for definite. Number 341 is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 for the Game Boy Advance. Yep, this is specifically the Game Boy Advance version. And do you remember all the way back at the start when I talk about Robot Wars Advanced Destruction? That was like in the high 400s. It was like right at the very start. I said that I had overestimated the power of the Game Boy Advance, and I said that there was going to be an example later on whereby that was also the case, and this was certainly the case here. Again, for some reason, and like I did with Virtua Fighter 2 on the Mega Drive, I thought that the Game Boy Advance had more capabilities than it did, so I was expecting a lot more from this game, which, looking back now, seems really silly, but that's just how it was at the time, I guess. It was just my past ignorance. And this game is really strange in the way that it controls, because it works as this sort of top-down view, but also sort of like this isometric side-on top-down view, whereby it does have the levels from the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, like the original version, but everything's all scaled weirdly. The characters that you play as look really small in comparison to like the half pipes and all the stuff around each of the level. And this game, I would say, is certainly harder to control than the original version, but it's something that you can get used to, because if I remember correctly, you held B to... B was sort of like the push forward and ollie button. A was the grind button. L was the flip tricks, and R was the grab tricks. So it had this rather unusual control layout, but you did eventually just get used to it. This version of the game is also very hard. I actually got very good at Tony Hawk's games when I was a certain age, but this game I had more trouble with. I never actually managed to complete it with any of the skaters. I know there was one skater that I managed to max out their stats. It might have been Steve Caballero, I think, but I don't remember fully. I think it was Steve Caballero, but there were some goals that I just could not do. Like the hidden tape in New York, I just could not do it, and there were certain. I think there was the keys in New York that you had to collect. I think there was some that I just couldn't get. Also, because of the graphics, some of the things were very skewed, so you couldn't tell exactly where something was without looking at its shadow. Because, like I mentioned with Rayman Hoodlum's Revenge, you often couldn't see how far away something was. You kind of just had to judge this 3D perspective. So sometimes you might think something's on the floor at a faraway distance, but it's actually in the air closer to you because of the weird camera angle. Also, this game didn't have the music because, of course, it's a Game Boy Advance game that the original had. So it just had this weird sort of generic video gamey music. So you'd have the cool and laid back song, and you'd think, alright, that's meant to be like a rap tune, and then you'd have the faster one, like, okay, that's meant to be like the punk music, the faster punk music, the type that I was into, and still am. And yeah, I do remember playing this game quite a lot at my nana's house back in the day, but I'm going to stop talking about that. I'm just going to quickly move on to number 340, which is Banjo-Kazooie. Now, some people think that this game is amazing. I actually didn't play this game on the N64 because, like I've said many, many times, I never had an N64. I originally played this game on the Xbox 360 arcade download version, and I thought it was alright. I didn't think it was as great as what people were saying it was. That might be to do with the fact that I didn't grow up with it. There's probably something there that, I just can't really describe. But that is honestly how I felt about the game. I did enjoy it, obviously, but I just didn't feel it was up to... I just didn't think it was on the same level as the classic platform games, I suppose. One thing that did stand out to me about this game was that there was only a few levels, but they were all really big. Like, there were things that would just take a long time to do, relatively speaking, for a platform game. And I did enjoy some of the different layouts of the level. I remember, like in the hub world, when you go through the Gruntilda's mouth so that you can get to all the levels, I did like how you could go around and find the different levels that way. I did like that. But I eventually got to the water level, which, well, I say that as if there's only one. I don't know. I remember I did get to a water level. It was quite sewery, and there was this weird giant metal shark thing. And I remember having a lot of trouble trying to control it underwater and get air and all that. People generally have the trouble with water. I don't. Most of the time, I think people's issues with water tend to be over-exaggerated, and I don't really have that same problem. But I found with Banjo-Kazooie in particular, it was harder to control underwater. But yeah, that's that. I'm actually just going to end this part here, so we will continue on next time with number 339. We're getting close to that 200 mark, so yeah, getting really, really good with this. But okay, I'm going to end this here, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.